What's up, guys? Today is August 5th, 2017. I have two editorials from The Hindu. First one, editing ourselves on genes and ethics. Second, price of rapacity on Supreme Court ruling against illegal mining. So let's start.
Scientists have for the first time managed to edit genes in a human embryo to repair a genetic mutation, fueling hopes that such procedures may one day be available outside laboratory conditions. In results announced in Nature this week, scientists fixed a mutation that thickens the heart muscle, a condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. The cardiac disease causes sudden death in otherwise healthy young athletes and affects about 1 in 500 people overall. It is caused by a mutation in a particular gene, and a child will suffer from the condition even if it inherits only one copy of the mutated gene. Correcting the mutation in the gene would not only ensure that the child is healthy, but it would also prevent the mutation from being passed on to future generations. In an attempt to remove the small portion of mutation, the researchers injected sperm of a man affected by hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and the gene editing tool called CRISPR-Cas9, that cuts the DNA near the position of the mutation, into the egg at the same time. The gene editing tool cut the DNA at the correct position in all embryos, and 42 out of the 58 embryos did not carry the mutation. Though the research marks a major milestone in genome editing of embryos, it will be a long while before it becomes available as a tool to produce healthy embryos. For instance, even research on embryos using federal funding is not permitted in the US, where the research was carried out. The embryos were produced with the clear intention of using them solely for research and not for implanting them in women. While several diseases can potentially be prevented by using this technique, including some cancers, the announcement has also revived fears about designer babies being within the realm of possibility. In retrospect, every advancement in reproductive health, starting from in vitro fertilization to the recent birth of a baby through the three-parent technique for mitochondria-related disease, has initially been mired in controversy but has ultimately come to stay. In the same way, the use of CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing tool, when proven safe for preventing certain hereditary disease-causing mutations from being passed on to the child, should be allowed, especially when no other treatment is available. In February this year, the U.S. National Academies of Sciences and Medicine allowed scientists to use the tool for research and said the technique to edit embryos will become acceptable for clinical use. But for that to happen, rigorous research involving multiple locations has to be carried out to address all safety concerns and ethical issues. To that end, the researchers have already addressed an inherent problem of producing embryos containing a mosaic of unrepaired and repaired cells by introducing the gene editing tool and the sperm together into the egg. Meanwhile, nonetheless, the philosophical and ethical debates will rage on. In ordering that leaseholders should pay compensation to the extent of 100% of the price of the quantum of minerals they had illegally extracted, the Supreme Court has gone beyond a mere affirmation of the polluter pays principle. It has also set a significant benchmark for stringent action against those who indulge in mining without environmental or forest clearance. Even the Central Empowered Committee had recommended compensation to the extent of 30% of the value of the iron ore and manganese ore illegally mined in Odisha, but the court has been firm about not compromising on the quantum of compensation. It is impossible to dispute the court's reasoning that the defaulter or violator should bear the consequences of the illegality, and therefore cannot be allowed the benefit of pocketing 70% of the illegally mined ore. The mining companies tried every possible means of avoiding the tag that they had illegally mined iron or manganese ore. Some of them argued that they did not require environmental clearance as they had started operations prior to 1994, when the environmental impact assessment notification was first issued, and that unless there was an expansion, they did not require environmental clearance. some said illegal mining was limited to mining activity outside the leased area, but the court has firmly ruled that any excess extraction within the leased area would also amount to unlawful mining. It has clarified that every renewal of a mining lease would require such clearance, even if there is no expansion, modernization, or increase in the pollution load. The apex court has been passing a series of orders on illegal mining activity, notably in Goa and Karnataka. It has often voiced concern over the extent to which mining laws are being flouted and how illegal mining is depleting the country's natural resources. In this verdict as well, the court identified rapacious mining in Odisha as a cause for great concern. There appears to be no effective policy or effective check on mining operations, it has noted. In strong words, it has asked the center to revisit its National Mineral Policy 2008, which seems to be only on paper and is not being enforced, perhaps due to the involvement of very powerful vested interests or a failure of nerve. It is clear that the country is already paying a heavy price for its failure to regulate mining operations in an effective manner in several parts of the country. It has become a source for corruption, excessive exploitation of natural resources, and a scourge in the lives of forest dwellers and tribals. The petitioners before the court had stressed on the principles of intergenerational equity, the responsibility of every generation to conserve resources with subsequent generations in mind while exploiting nature. The court, understandably, has not set a limit for mining activities, but it has certainly flagged some issues for those in power to bear in mind.